Previously on my Lana Del Rey career recap, we discussed Lana's critical darling, NFR, which saw Lana finally get her flowers not just from the trades and the critics, but casual music listeners as well. Chronologically, we left off on the release of NFR, its supporting tour, and the 2020 Grammys, which saw the album get robbed from Album of the Year. The follow-up to NFR was first teased when NFR was actually released. In an interview with The Times, Lana alluded to White Hot Forever, stating that it was already in progress. Lana hinted that it'd be out within the year and would serve as a companion to NFR sonically. White Hot Forever would not end up being the album's final title, let alone the title of the song its words are contained in. Instead, Lana would release Chemtrails Over the Country Club, her 7th studio album, on March 19, 2021. I previously reviewed this record on my channel, so this is a case of deja vu for me, but this video will reevaluate the era, the music, and the controversies that Lana found herself in during the release of the record. It goes without saying that Chemtrails was a very messy era. We have to factor for the pandemic, which forced an early end to the NFR era and shut the whole world down, forcing everyone to change their plans. Lana herself had many plans for projects, perhaps too many. For one, she had announced a poetry book, Violets Bent Backwards Over the Grass, at the end of 2019, which was meant to be released in January of 2020, but that didn't happen until much later in the year. It can be assumed that while the world stopped, Jack and Lana continued work on Chemtrails. Being an early Lana Del Rey stan, in hindsight, we should have anticipated that all of the goodwill gained from NFR would see Lana face major backlash. It's a running thread amongst women in the pop space, a never-ending pendulum, if you will, that sees the public love, then loathe, then love women in the industry. NFR was a huge swing towards widespread adoration, so a return to scrutiny was bound to happen. In Lana's case, it was a partially self-inflicted situation. We can't discuss Chemtrails without touching on the controversy that occurred on May 21st, 2020, when she first announced the album's release in an Instagram essay that many would come to call "Question for the Culture." In the infamous post, which now even has its own Genius page with annotations, Lana calls out her critics who had accused her of glamorizing abuse when in reality she felt like she was singing about complicated relationships she's had, and goes on to talk about how she's endured 10 years of bullshit reviews, particularly for her first 2 records. She ended the post announcing 2 poetry books, making reparations to Native American organizations through the profits of those books, and teasing a September release date for the new album. Ultimately, clumsy phrasing, specifically naming other women in the industry, a majority of whom were women of color, led to major backlash. While Lana would go on to call the women listed her favorite people and say that it wasn't a woman of color issue, it was not a good look, especially to a general public who can't be bothered to read more than headlines or tweets. Likewise, it didn't help that the Barbs and the Beehive are 2 of the strongest fan bases out there, and they were rightfully not happy with the unnecessary name dropping. Nearly 3 years after the fact, however, I've come to realize that Lana's intentions were definitely not to be offensive, and there are truths to what she wrote, but again, it was really lost to unclear writing, and again, entrusting people to read an essay on Instagram. I thought that it was a rare, unforced error which came to haunt the discourse about her and her music for the next year. It really did cause another pile-on for Lana. Shortly after releasing Violets, her book, Lana found herself dragged in yet another controversy, this time for wearing a mesh mask to a book reading event in Los Angeles in October 2020. Lana would respond saying that she had plastic under her mask and that she was following 6 Feet protocol. The first single off the record, Let Me Love You Like a Woman, dropped in the middle of the month, another Antonov production that was well received, though some noted that it was too similar to NFR. The next month, Lana announced that Chemtrails had been delayed to March due to vinyl production issues, and later fought a fan who jokingly implied that she had voted for Trump in the 2020 election. Lana properly introduced the world to Chemtrails in January of 2021, showcasing the album art and the track list. She faced backlash yet again for a black and white cover art portraying her and her best friends, allegedly not featuring enough diversity despite having women of color in it. Regardless, she made an infamous comment about having rapper boyfriends, about her best friends being in the picture, and not storming the Capitol. Incidents like these would drive her decision to eventually leave social media entirely September of that year. Lana dropped the title track and perhaps one of her most cryptic and chaotic music videos to date before the album dropped on March 19th. Despite all of the controversy, Chemtrails was objectively a success. It scored her second highest rated album to date. Many lauded her songwriting ability, some praising it as a very thoughtful meditation on fame and romance. Others noted that the album's minimalism and dedication to world building was Lana being at the top of her game. More critical reviews called it an inferior imitation of NFR, with some criticism being pointed to not having enough standout tracks and being lyrically clumsy. Regardless, it made many year-end lists and debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, selling 75,000 units. Revisiting Chemtrails, I often think about the unfortunate conditions this album existed in, not just in the controversies, but coming after what many consider her best record. It also didn't help that Jack more or less started to wear out his welcome that same year, even recycling melodies in later works. That same year, Lana released Blue Banisters, which I preferred, and also made this album feel less special in some ways. Rewatching my old review, I think many of my points hold up, but I'd like to add that this definitely was not a pandemic record so much as an album that dropped during a pandemic. Blue Banisters itself is Lana's pandemic record. Likewise, this album is truly NFR's Midwestern sister. I feel like part of why some fans don't like this record as much is more or less being Lana leaving the confines of the LA setting that her previous 3 records entrenched themselves in. Here, Lana leaves Calabasas for different pastures ranging from Northern California, Arkansas, and even Central Florida. Chemtrails isn't Lana's most challenging listen. If anything, it might be one of the most breezy, shorter records that a casual listener can come to love. I've come to appreciate it myself. I thought that it was pretty reflective, well done, and it does have some standout tracks. White Dress was a show-stopping opener track that lyrically serves as a flashback to her Lizzie Grant May Jailer days when she was just a waitress, only 19, finding her footing. In it, she ponders if fame was truly worth it after all, while delivering some of her best vocals to date. The lyrics down at the Men in the Music Business Conference are purposefully awkward as they satirize the way that men in the industry had asked her to box herself in to make themselves feel comfortable. I interpret her delivery being cramped to reflect that discomfort. It's small details like this that really make Lana Lana. The title track feels like an extension of NFR's sound, but lyrically it delves into astrology and painting the atmosphere of suburbia while repurposing the image of chemtrails, which some believe are a conspiracy. It's really the sprawling, hypnotic track that ponders if normalcy is real. Listening to it reminds me a lot of that Florence Pugh movie Don't Worry Darling, except it's actually good. Pardon my laughter. Tulsa Jesus Freak detours to the American South. It's a partly somewhat sarcastic ode to Lana's ex, Sean Larkin, indirectly referencing his stint in Tulsa as a cop on a reality show. The track rephrases the candle in the wind imagery heard on Mariner's apartment complex, pointing out that she's much stabler now. The irony of White Hot Forever is kind of funny because the passion's clearly gone now, burnt up. The allusions to the bottle in the Bible make me think that this is about someone who portrays themselves as a good Christian man but is a hypocritical drunk. Let Me Love You Like a Woman was the lead single and a song that I didn't quite like in my earlier review. It's a straightforward extension of the NFR sound, but re-examining Lana's ill-fated question for the culture, the decision to make this the first single makes a lot more sense in that she's underscoring the fragile femininity she felt was being shunned by her critics. And in that context, the song becomes a more defiant track about Lana's unwavering dedication to her messaging and vision. Lyrically, it mentions leaving LA. However, I believe the standout track for this record is still Wild at Heart, which interpolates the chorus of NFR's love song for the pre-chorus and the guitar solo from How to Disappear for its chorus. The track feels like a direct sister to Disappear, even bringing up John from the Boulevard. The chorus itself is a masterpiece, singing about leaving Calabasas and pointing the finger at the paps for the passing of Princess Diana, a true life conspiracy. In this song, she chooses love over fame thematically. It's so good that Jack even recycled its chord progression for Lord Stoned at the Nail Salon. Dark But Just a Game is another standout. Its title was derived from a saying that Jack told Lana, and its contents feel parallel to the sentiments of those in Get Free, touching on the darker facets of fame and the price people pay to get it. There's very much a tinge of ultraviolence in the song, but that chorus is immaculate. I love the flow of it. The line, "No rose left on the vine," is very clear-cut imagery about the world taking so much from her, but her intention not to change to play the game. Not All Those Who Wonder evokes country folk, where she name drops Lincoln, Nebraska, a place that she came to while touring. It's about wanderlust, the need to explore for the sake of it, a very human instinct. I like the way that she bends her words to create a rhyme in verse 2. The word meant is stretched out to really fit the song's cadence. Yosemite is the sole non-Antonov track, a holdover from Lust for Life, and a sister track to the next best American record. Again, Lana really does bring up the imagery of Candle in the Wind to reinforce her strength. The chorus itself is so free and simple. The refrain, "We did it for the right reasons," could be one of Lana's most romantic yet grounded lines to date. The beauty of the track is that Lana held off releasing it because she felt like she wasn't ready to drop it way back when, but her dropping it at the time marked that she felt like she was grown enough to do so. Rick Knowles, shout out to the people saying that I said it wrong for the past few videos, his production was great. Breaking Up Slowly with Nikki Lane has to be a really underrated collaboration of Lana's. It's a song that partly retells Tammy Wynette's tragic life, partly her failed romance with George Jones. I recall playing this track for a friend who really did think that Nikki was Miley, as they sound very similar. Dance Till We Die is the last original song off the album. It's just this really fun, nostalgic, wistful track where she homages the greats, recalling covering Joni Mitchell, which she does on this album, her fun times with Courtney Love, and Joan Baez. I just really felt like the bridge was a fun switch up that elevates this track for me. The album closes on a cover for Joni Mitchell's For Free with Zella Day and Wade's Blood, who each take on a verse and do the song justice. Thematically, it closes the album by talking about performance for the sake of performance and art for the sake of art, rather than fame. I felt like it was a perfect parallel to White Dress in that she recalls the time that she used to perform for the sake of performing, and now, she has escaped the dark underbelly of the music industry that really does take away artistry in favor for image, pride, and money. Overall, Chemtrails is a pretty intelligent record that sonically feels unambitious, but thematically tackles some of Lana's biggest existential questions to date. It sadly found itself crushed between the pressures of following NFR and being overshadowed by her next record, Blue Banisters, Lana's proper pandemic record that really was a cryptic response to renewed controversy. I still rate it an 8.5, the score still holds. It didn't quite improve in my re-listen, but it didn't go down either. And that's a wrap. Surprise! I just wanted to see if I could get one more in right before Ocean Boulevard, and I did it. It's kind of crazy revisiting such a hard time to be a Lana stan, but looking back and compared to the insanity of the world today, it feels so long ago and small potatoes in a sense. Of course, not to discount the genuine feelings that she hurt, as well as the valid criticisms that came afterwards, that I honestly felt like she took to heart. My next video will be Ocean Boulevard. I'm aiming to get this to you as soon as possible, though it may take some time for me to digest it and analyze it properly. Thanks again for your patience and support throughout this entire series. I'm so grateful for the space. A shout out to my members. Like, subscribe, comment your favorite track off Chemtrails or how you really felt about the era, good or bad. I love hearing it. And I will see you next time.